What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Inside the Game, your one source for everything that's cool in the world of video games. Now, you can always be a part of the show. All you have to do is go to insidethegame.ca or hit us up on Discord, where there you can submit your clip and end off our show. And of course, if you want to see more footage, all you have to do is hit us up on YouTube, where there we post all kinds of content. Now, coming up on this week's show is jam-packed from everything from outer space to a huge RPG and puzzle games. But to get things started, you know how it goes. It's the Inside Scoop.
So longtime smartphone case maker Otterbox is finally dipping their toes into the gaming world. And they're actually kind of coming in with a bit of a splash here. They've partnered up with Xbox to come out with a few accessories for the Xbox controller and your phone. Mainly kind of geared towards the new xCloud streaming service, where you can kind of just jump on and play games from your phone. And as long as you have a controller, there is touch controls as well, but definitely with a controller makes things a lot nicer. So what Otterbox has got going here is actually a skin that goes onto your controller. They have it for the new Series X and Series S, as well as the old gen Xbox One controller. So the nice thing is it kind of adds a little bit of a grip and some protection against drops or those aggressive throws if you're in a fit of rage. But the nice thing here is there's actually a clip that mounts right to the controller that'll hold your phone. And from there, that clip, I mean, it's pretty standard. We see lots of different kind of versions of that. But the cool thing is that you can also get a case for your phone that is kind of heat dissipating. It actually will help cool your phone during those long gaming sessions. And they're also adding in a privacy screen that will also fit onto your phone as well. So, you know, if you're kind of playing out in public, people don't always need to know what you're doing, but you can also enjoy what you're doing as well. So I think it's kind of cool to see Otterbox jumping into the gaming realm and partnering up with Xbox, and Xbox being like, come on in, because you want to know what? This xCloud isn't going anywhere. It's definitely only going up from here. Being able to hop on and play, you know, your Xbox library from another device other than just sitting in front of your TV is amazing. Being able to take your phone with you in a controller and go and play what you were playing at home before you left is a great feature. So, you know, the more people kind of jumping into this market and adding, you know, third-party accessories to this, I think is only going to help it grow and give people more options to get into this. So I think, you know, Otterbox has definitely hit a home run with this, and I think I'll be really interested to see what people think when they start using this controller grip and then, you know, the phone case as well. I think there's some cool things here, and I think other companies are going to look at this and maybe try to take from it as well, and, you know, help launch their third-party version of a mobile gaming device for the Xbox xCloud streaming service.
The Callisto Protocol was announced in the CG trailer over the Game Awards on 2020. It seemed like a spooky horror game for sure, set in the world of none other than PUBG. Yeah, we had no idea. But Glenn, the CEO over at Striking Distance Studios, had an interview with Games Radar and tried to explain the future of PUBG and their upcoming title. We're a part of helping PUBG Corp as a team of writers working on the lore of PUBG and the universe. They have a timeline, and we fit on that timeline now. Of course, the games are very far apart in terms of time and setting. The Callisto Protocol takes place 300 years in the future on one of Jupiter's moons. However, there will still be some links back to PUBG. Well, I can't say I saw this one coming. PUBG is a military shooter, battle royale. So to kind of take a spin on that, make it a horror, sci-fi, adventure, story-driven game seems a little odd for the world of PUBG. But we can find out more when the game launches next year.
So over the last few months, we've had a lot of discussion over Bethesda being bought out by Microsoft and what all that entails. Whether or not games will be coming to Game Pass, whether or not we'll get the beloved Elder Scrolls and Fallout series on PlayStation 5 moving forward. So many questions, and over the last few months since this whole, big thing blew up, we've only really gotten little things trickled to us. And now to kind of spice it up even more, something that really is exciting though is that from Bethesda, this is a tweet from Bethesda, that they are partnering with LucasArts Games to make a new Indiana Jones game. And Todd Howard will be the executive producer in this game. So wow, that is all amazing. But just to put the cherry on top, one of my favorite game developers, Machine Games, they will be making this game. This is extremely exciting. It does kind of give us some question on whether or not we will get a Wolfenstein 3. It did say in the tweet that we won't get much information about this Indiana Jones game for a while, but they were just too excited that they had to share it. So, wow, this is just so exciting. Will Indiana Jones be exclusive to the Xbox Microsoft family? I kind of hope so, but at the same time I hope not. Maybe we'll have to see how this whole generation plays out. Sony's been pretty amazing with their exclusives, and I think that they're going to keep driving that forward. So we'll have to see how Xbox kind of plays their cards.
We got some pretty exciting news set in the world of Star Wars. For those of you who may not know, EA's been holding the rights to all the Star Wars games for the past, well, it's supposed to be 10 years. Technically, this deal was signed back in 2013 with Disney and EA moving forward for a license agreement of a 10-year deal making Star Wars games. Well, it's now 2021, and it's come to light over on Wired that the fact that Ubisoft, the team behind The Division and Division 2, Massive Entertainment, is moving forward into the world of Star Wars and going to be bringing us an open-world, story-driven adventure game. Has me pretty excited, and it also has me questioning what happened to that 10-year deal over at EA.
Now, if you're a fan of the Harry Potter books and films, then you may have heard or saw from the PlayStation 5 event the reveal of Hogwarts Legacy. Now, Hogwarts Legacy is set in the Harry Potter universe, but as it's set in the 1800s, it's actually on an earlier timeline than the Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts movies. Now, I saw the trailer for this and it looked absolutely amazing, and I was looking forward to playing it this year, but unfortunately it's been delayed till 2022, and the developers put this in a tweet. We would like to thank fans from around the world on the tremendous reaction to the announcement of Hogwarts Legacy from our Portkey Games label. Creating the best possible experience for all the wizarding world and the gaming fans is paramount to us, so we're giving the game the time it needs. Hogwarts Legacy will be released in 2022. In my opinion, 2020 just went like that, and in this current situation, what's another year? But also bearing in mind that the release of Cyberpunk 2077 didn't go too well, and there was a lot of angry gamers, fans, and even investors. So I'm hoping that Warner Bros. Hogwarts Legacy will release a game that the fans want, a good, reliable, fun game. But also bearing in mind, the game was supposed to be released this year, and it was supposed to come out on the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. Well, now the game's been delayed till next year, so would this game be able to run on the old G consoles? We'll have to just wait and see, but I've got a feeling that they might end up dropping the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 version.
All right, Scott, we're heading out into Everspace. Scott, you and I are back into the world of Everspace. Everspace 2 is out for us. It was a... Man, I had mixed reactions going in whether or not we're going to get into this one because we had mixed feelings from the first Everspace, but they really seem to amp it up this time around, and I've had an absolute blast playing the game. How about you?
Yeah, this version that we're getting into is a pre-release build still, but it has taken some changes and some feedback from the first wave of alphas, and it seems like they've incorporated into a much more impressive package this time around. The game looks beautiful, I have to say.
Yeah.
One of the first things that draw me in this game is the actual vistas and everything that you get to look at in this as you're flying by at super speeds. It is a very action-packed kind of space shooter game, but there's a lot of exploration and scavenging packed into that, so there's a lot there for, you know, a couple different kinds of players.
No, absolutely.
I was impressed with the scale of this game, but also the way they have led you through certain scenarios at the beginning stages.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's much more cleaned up for a new kind of player to this universe.
Yeah, no, for sure, Scott. There's an opportunity here that they've presented with what feels like a full-fledged story, pushing the game forward, allowing you to understand why you're there in the first place, what's going on in the world, and what your overall goal is. Something that wasn't really present in the past Everspace. You're kind of just set out. You go out into the galaxy and you mine a couple things, and then you teleport off to the next one, and then you come back and you go to the next one. And there was that roguelike feel of when you just were destroyed, you come back, pick up the pieces. This time around, not so much in that sense, but you have this story that's such a big focus and a big draw to me. And then the ability to go out, because you do look for resources. It's got this bit of an upgrade survival aspect to the game as well. But it's not like when you die, you start all over. You just kind of go back to your last checkpoint and then move forward. Coolest part is that you're an actual clone pilot. Not to get too spoilerish into the story at all, but there's a couple things gone wrong, and now you're out in the galaxy trying to get off of this area that you're in and explore. But then as you go through your story, you run into these other characters. These other characters are impactful, and it just helps expand on the overall scope of the world of Everspace 2. And I felt at times that I was out there, and when you feel and you're out in the galaxy, you kind of wonder if you're going to be all alone. And I didn't feel that at all. There's always something on the go. It felt populated. At the same time, when I had moments, though, that it was just me and my spaceship when I was out there kind of exploring. But then you got into these battles. Man, some of those battles, Scott, are tough.
Yeah, there is quite a difficulty behind some of these engagements. When you get even just a squadron of 5 enemies comes upon you, it's a lot harder to fight off than you might think. And it's a lot to do with this long-term game that's happening in the background between missions where you're finding different characters and you're leveling up your ship and your facilities and these characters' abilities. And I feel like there's a lot more of an intelligent path through the game where you're supposed to take a break and really think about kind of where you want to build your ship and character up into a combat role. And I think that's a really interesting thing, because it's not that throwaway kind of play style that the Everspace 1 was known for. It's done a lot to explain the roguelite elements, and this game has definitely gone in a different direction with it. There's quite a contrast between the kind of smaller areas you used to be drawn through in Everspace 1, and now comparing that to a much larger open, at least it feels much larger and open gameplay area that you are kind of left to decide your own fate and string together your own story out of these quests. And I think that was an interesting turn for the series entirely. It makes it more of an experience when you come across these really, really hard fights. You know, maybe find a different path for a little while and come back and triumph over some of these crazy fighters. It's an interesting cycle that'll definitely get certain gamers addicted for sure.
Yeah, no, easily you get this kind of this grind, this loop of kind of going out and searching for other items and just exploring some of the worlds, the actual planets that they've created, and you're warping from one area into the next. And it's linear, but it's not, right? Because you're given a checkpoint, you go to that checkpoint, and then from there, when you warp into that world, from there it's kind of the open space. but you're moving around this massive galaxy. It is huge, and the more you explore, the more opportunities come up. And that's one of the coolest things, is when I found myself going from planet to planet, it didn't planet to planet to space station to wherever other object I was heading to. It never felt like it was repetitive. I didn't feel like they were using the same assets, which often you can see in these games a lot of the time. So I always felt there was something new and something fresh to push me forward. Man, this game was a ton of fun, and I just want to keep playing even more. And the story was such a great connection and a hook that was well done, well voice-overed as well. And the music, I thought, matched everything perfectly along while I was playing. And the ability to upgrade not only myself, my ship, and my other crewmates, man, it's just, there's so much compact into this game. It was awesome.
I'll be damned if they didn't load any medical supplies.
God, I don't think either one of us felt too lost out in Everspace 2. We had a blast playing this game. I absolutely loved it. The story was well done. There's so much to upgrade and so much to explore, which always felt so different. For me, dude, I have to recommend Everspace 2.
Yeah, based on my first experience coming into this one, I was a little worried maybe that I wouldn't enjoy certain aspects of it, but they absolutely have responded to a lot of the feedback from the first wave of alphas, and I have to say that I've seen the improvement in this version already. Something that's very pleasing to me is they've gone the extra mile with a narrative. They have the story to keep you going through, and it's a more directed experience, and they've really cleaned up kind of the scouring the environment aspect of this game and really made it something a lot more enjoyable. I have to recommend this one as well.
Nice.
After many changes and updates during development, we take another look at the pre-release of Everspace 2. Much has improved since our first time with the game, and we have to recommend this game to those interested.
What's up, everybody? On last week's episode, we mentioned that Next Level Games joined the family of Nintendo as a first-party studio. You know them from the Luigi's Mansion 3. But did you know they're one of 2 first-party studios not based in the Asian market? That's right, they joined Retro Studios out of Austin, Texas, and well, Next Level Games is from Vancouver, BC, Canada, our homeland. And that's it for Did You Know, because, well, now you know.
All right, Corey, it looks like we're in the early 1900s trying to save President Roosevelt in the Dread Machine. Alright, Corey, we got our hands on a really cool game, Bartlow's Dread Machine. And man, what did you think of this twin stick shooter that kind of blindsided us?
Blindsided's the right word, man. I had no idea what this game was. I had never heard of it. And you know what? Probably because it's only $15. It's not a game that's flying high on the radar right now. But let me tell you, this game's a ton of fun. And it's basically this kind of unique, old-timey twin stick shooter. And we're a Secret Service agent, and this is kind of how the campaign plays out. By the way, you can play the the campaign single player or couch co-op, which is actually really, really cool because, you know, we played a couple games lately that have been on the cheaper side that have offered co-op, so it's kind of neat to see the fact that couch co-op is starting to become maybe a little more common now than it has been in the past, at least in the past few years, right? But back to the story here, where the Secret Service agent Teddy Roosevelt has been captured by kind of this evil doer at the beginning of the game here, and our job is to rescue him. And let me tell you, we kind of go through 5 kind of worlds here, and it gets pretty intense along the way. There's a few different difficulty modes we can play on here. I played on normal. I'm pretty sure you played on normal as well. Yeah. And let me tell you, it's definitely a little harder than normal, that's for sure. The game mechanics here are pretty interesting. You travel along a series of tracks, and it's hard to, without seeing it, it's hard to, you know, kind of to describe it, but my best way to say it is it's like kind of like a carnival game. Like your character's on this kind of post and he's walking around, and you have these paths that you can kind of choose to travel down, and depending on which path you go down, you may encounter certain enemies coming from different directions. They're traveling on the same paths you are, so it gets pretty intense because sometimes you start dealing with multiple enemies, and they're not just coming from in front of you, they start coming from behind you as well, and also in the background too, in the environment. And I don't know about you, the environments in this game is actually really what drew me in immediately. What did you think?
Oh, absolutely, man. The overall aesthetic of this game is unlike anything I've really seen. It's just like you said, it's like this carnival game from the early 1900s. It's like the best way I could describe it. And just the way the environment interacts with you, you can destroy some of it. A lot of the time you're actually kind of hiding behind cover while these ranged guys are attacking you. It's just a ton of fun, and the game's pacing I think is great, man. They introduce you with melee characters and then some ranged characters and then different types of each unit, while not just being this side-scrolling perspective. You go to a pan out or you go to a top down. There is so much variety in this game. It just, as you play it, you're constantly just getting thrown at you new things, man. It's honestly, I can't even hype this game enough.
You're right, though. The camera angle change really threw me for a loop because you're in the middle of playing the level, and up to a certain point, you're only side-scrolling, you know, left to right, and then out of nowhere, the camera angle shifts, and now you're straight up, top down, and it changes the entire way you play the game. Now you're seeing the enemies coming at you from all directions, and the perspective change really keeps this fresh, right? Because I could see if you were just going that side-scrolling left to right, it would start to feel a bit repetitive. So when you get into these kind of altered perspectives, it really allows you to kind of change the way you play this game, because a lot of the boss battles in this game, which I don't know about you, I thought they were awesome. They take a lot of these camera perspectives into consideration. There is a lot of camera changes with some of these boss battles, and that's what really makes this game fun. Again, for such a cheap game, this game's on Steam and Xbox. It's amazing that they kind of packed all this content in. Mind you, the story isn't super deep by any means. It plays on its kind of cartoony vibe that this game throws out, but at the same time, it is a solid game. The gameplay mechanics are really good here. The controls are laid out really well. I like all the different kinds of weapons you can purchase as you go through this game. There's unlockable characters, like you said. You know, that you kind of jump into this, you know, a little bit of this, you're always kind of hunting for this new stuff. And we kind of discussed a little bit earlier, you kind of said you have to go off track to find some of these things. And I mean, literally, you can't go off track, but there's so many different paths you can choose to take in this game, whether they, you know, lead back up to where you were going, and, you know, it might just be a little alcove off, but you find these hidden characters, these hidden objectives, and it's, you know, there's just more to this game than I think we both thought coming in.
Man, it's just a perfect package. While you're playing each mission, you're collecting cash, and with this cash you can buy some extraordinary weapons and armor that really does benefit you from, you know, the starting gear to the best gear. Like, you get extra lives, you take way less damage. There's actual, you know, there's things to grind towards while you're playing this game. And I even found there's a couple times where it's like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for this, I need to buy a better weapon. You know?
Yeah, no,
so
for sure, man.
This game, they just hit everything on point, man. If I could maybe complain about one thing, and it's absolutely tiny, it's while you're traversing through the fixated paths, maybe sometimes while I'm trying to make a left or a right turn or go up or down, sometimes I get hooked, or I don't quite make that, turn or whatever, but it's really nothing game breaking. It's so small. I just had to mention something bad about this game because it's been so good so far.
Oh, I know, man. Honestly, if I had anything to gripe about this game, I agree. Every once in a while, you just kind of get hooked or tied up on an odd corner, but by no means does it hinder your ability at all. You're just kind of jamming on the sticks anyway, so you just kind of move in another direction, then you kind of break through that corner. It's not a big deal. So it's such a minor thing. Honestly, I think we can gush about this game, all day long because I'm still having a blast playing it. The fact that you kind of jump back in, there's a lot of replayability here. If you've got to score Bartlow's Dread Machine, Nate, what are you going to give it, man?
Well, man, the lighthearted story, the overall aesthetic of the game, I want to see more games like this. I want this kind of half fixated path style game, man. I'm here with a 9.5. This game is almost perfect.
Oh man, a 9.5. That's you know what, that's a little higher than me, but honestly, I'm right up there, dude. I had a ton of fun playing this game. I think the fact that we were both kind of surprised by this one made it that much more fun for us to enjoy. The fact that you can hop in couch co-op and play as some of these other characters that have special abilities on top of just the base characters that you get in this game. There's so much in a $15 package here. I gotta give this one a 9 out of 10.
Nice.
Great gameplay with beautiful level design and unique mechanics, paired with great audio and fun boss battles, will leave you wanting more of this twin stick shooter.
All right, Scott, let's head out in the world of Outward. You and I jumped into our Google Stadia to check out Outward, and this is an RPG that, dude, did not strike home with me at all. There was just one issue after another after another. Before I get into those, though, why don't we kick it over to you? Because I'm not in for a good review, I gotta be honest.
Well, you win some and you lose some, but my first impressions of this game were that there's a lot going on to this, but it's gonna be a little while of digging through the game before I really kind of understand the scope of everything. The game itself doesn't really look graphically very strong, but it's an exploration adventure RPG, so I put that aside and I jumped in for it, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about this one.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Like, you hit it right up from the beginning there, Scott. Graphically, this game looks awful. I'm not holding back. This game is bad, all around bad. The systems, I think, are there, but that's all this game has going for it. You come back from your adventure out at sea, and you're kind of hit up on this island by all the people in your village looking for the money to pay the rent for your lighthouse. And if you don't have that within 5 days, you're basically booted out. And that's how your adventure starts. But from there, dude, everything else was just busted. It was just, the world of Outward is empty. You go across these vast open areas, and I got no problem doing that. I do it all the time. I play Red Dead Online all the time, and you go from one stretch to the other, and there's nothing there. Like, it's just wildlife. But dude, there wasn't even wildlife here. There's the odd hyena. The hyenas look awful. The ground itself is, you can see where the seams are when they were building out the world, and it's just like, man, I just didn't get it. I'm walking around, and I got nailed by some bandits. All right, cool. I finally get a bit of action. I died, get kidnapped, go back to their camp. and there's a mace there. I pick up the mace, I walk out of the jail cell, more or less, go to a tent, grab all my stuff, and then walk out of the bandit camp. Like, dude, there's nobody around. Just nobody there. And I was like, like, how? How is this even possible? The game is just empty, Scott. It is busted. I'm walking, again, out in the open area, and right now, there's snow everywhere. And I think the snow actually helped the game look better. Because when it was in the summertime, dude, it's all flat textures, just painted. And then little strands of grass. And then there's some trees. You go up to the trees, it's just a box with a bunch of painted textures on it. There's no depth to any of the world environment itself. And that's a problem for me. Because now with everything, the technology today, and the graphical fidelity of everything, things look so realistic now. And the game has that direction, but it just didn't achieve it in the slightest. You meet characters that are out in the world, and they say half the dialogue that's on screen. I'm like, well, that's a little odd. I don't know if that's normal, but for me, that seemed a little off-putting. Either say the whole thing, or don't say anything at all, and I'll just read it. But for me, it was like, okay, you had to read what they said, because what they were voiced overed wouldn't always match what was on screen either, or they just wouldn't finish. So then you had to read it anyways. I was just, man, this whole game had me confused and not having a good time at all.
Yeah, and it's a very hard thing to get used to when you are trying to get some direction from these NPCs. So you really do have to read everything they're saying to you, because they'll give you directions to certain locations or, quest headings and stuff like that. But I had a really hard time in the main city, even kind of walking around, trying to get my feel of the game. And it's like all the set pieces are there, but spread over twice the area of that it should have been. It was a not completely empty city, but a lot of the NPCs you can't talk to, or there's just guards. There's buildings here and there, but you can't enter a lot of them. So it was a lot of kind of moving around this looked properly built city, but just not really sure what I'm even supposed to be doing exactly. And that was what held me back from getting into this game further. Was I just wanted a typical quest waypoint, somewhere to point me to the next area, and it just didn't exist, or it was very, very hard to understand. That's definitely a hard time, because you get out into the world, like you say, and you're crossing vast expanses, and you're getting lost in caves sometimes, or finding certain interesting locations, but you really have to do all the legwork to find these locations, and that was a little disappointing.
No, absolutely. You would pull up the map, but I didn't even know where I was at the map. You can go over icons on the map, and that tells you the locations. And I'm like, okay, so there's the town or village I'm in currently, and then when you get out of that village, you're kind of just out on your own. And so for some games that works, but for this big RPG, for me, I was like, okay, now where do I go? And you just set out, and you're supposed to go out and craft certain things, and gain new abilities and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But like Scott, this game was irritating, dude. You could go out to a tree, and for an RPG like this, every other mechanic in the game, you need a tool in order to achieve something. So if you need mining resources, you need a pickaxe, and then you can, get some ore or something on that line. But if you walk up to a tree, you can just grab it and get some wood. You don't need an axe. You just grab it, and then all of a sudden you have a stick. I'm like, how's that work? The whole game just has me baffled, man.
Yeah, it's very kind of convoluted as to how you're supposed to go about gathering these resources, and the crafting wasn't very well explained, at least nothing I gathered or picked up on. It's a system in there, but I think it's in there just because it's an RPG, so it's checking the list of, what do we need in an RPG? We need, a map system. We need a crafting system. So they're in there.
For sure.
But were they utilized or explained well? I don't really believe so. And then even when it gets to something as, central as combat is in the RPG scenarios, that I just had such a hard time getting into the combat. You have a heavy attack, a light attack, and a block, and there's several weapon types. That's interesting, but again, it was just no explanation or training or tutorial involved in that at all. It was just kind of, here's an item, it's a sword, swing it. You know what the sword goes for. But if as a layman into this world and it's all brand new to me, I would have definitely appreciated a lot more direction.
No, absolutely. We had ventured out into the world of Outward, and dude, it didn't hit home at all. I think the best part about this game is the actual music direction. For me, I thought the music was fantastic, but everything else besides that is absolutely busted. The mechanics of the fighting mechanic, the world itself isn't well put together, there's no sense of direction, and the dialogue is just all over the place. For me, Outward gets a 1.
Ouch, yeah, there's a lot of things holding this one back, and it's really unfortunate. I think they did a good attempt at trying to put the ambience together with the music and the idea of venturing out further into the world and going on these long adventures. They were definitely attempting to go for something new here, but it just kind of fell flat with us. The combat really holds me down, and the enemy that you come across just is somewhat generic, and it just really didn't land with me either. I have to give this one a 4 out of 10. Outward is an ambitious adventure RPG with lots of classic elements and a large map. Unfortunately, it is very empty feeling and has a serious lack of player direction.
Guys, we know how big the video game industry is, but one of those big portions within the industry is actually the mobile market itself, projected to make $100 billion. Man, that is a ton of money, and yeah, it's an absolute staggering amount of money. Everybody goes to mobile because why? Because it's accessible, it's easy, it's right there, your phone is always with you. Where do we see the future of mobile gaming? Man, honestly, it gets bigger and gets bigger. You've seen the rise of Apple Arcade over the past year and a bit because they know how important mobile gaming is. Whether that's on your tablet or on your phone, mobile gaming is massive and is going everywhere. You're also starting to see now Google Stadia. You see Project xCloud. You have the ability to take a console game and play that on your phone. Why? Because phones are more powerful now than ever, and Xbox and Google want a piece of that. Going forward, guys, where do you think mobile games is gonna head? Honestly, I don't see it slowing down. Everybody's there. At one point, you could play Fortnite on a mobile device. We'll see what happens with that one again. But you know what I mean? Like, one of the biggest games of all time was on mobile. Graphically, everything is now so much smoother. There's some of the games I'm playing, like I'm playing Hitman Sniper 2 is on there, which is fantastic. The graphics are just, they're kind of like PS3, Xbox 360 era. You know what I mean, Nate?
Oh yeah, man. Well, when Apple, struck out Fortnite, and when they allowed them, to not play Fortnite on Apple anymore, man, that was 109 million people that they completely cut out. So the mobile market is pretty big, and this game that we've been playing a lot of lately, Among Us, they hit over, I think it's either 250 million or 500 million users within the last year.
I think it was 500 million.
I think it's half a billion. So, and you want to know why? Because it's also on the mobile market. So where do I see mobile gaming? Well, it's just gonna keep getting bigger, man. That's straight up it. Now, one thing I kind of have to add on is that some companies, I think Blizzard in particular, they kind of need to, they've already made the mistake, but companies need to watch it. Gamers do not want mobile games coming first. They want Diablo 4 should have come first. Diablo Immortals, it looks really cool. Actually, I've seen an hour gameplay on it, and one of my favorite YouTubers, he was praising it quite a bit. So that's great, but the hardcore gamers are not mobile gamers, man. Just because numbers show that people play put money on their phone games. That's one thing, but it's the hardcore gamers that are the loudest, and that really is where it comes down to. So I just hope, like, Elder Scrolls, they did a Blades game. We got so many of these big companies kind of doing iterations that, like, they'd be silly not to. And Corey, well, man, what do you think about this? Because obviously, I mean, it's pretty hard to say anything else other than that it's going to get bigger.
Well, that over the last year, we've seen how quickly things have changed in the mobile market, whether it be, Stadia is a year old now, and, Drew, your interview there kind of discussed what the future of Stadia is going to look like. xCloud's kind of right on their tail. They have a bit of a different iteration to it because you're accessing your Xbox library, but at the same time, it's technology that we've never had before, and you could literally play a video game on any screen you have, whether it's your phone, a tablet, a computer screen, your TV, anything. I mean, it's so accessible. And I've been doing, in a lot of our news articles, I've been doing a ton of third-party equipment, whether it be right for your mobile phone or for something like the xCloud gaming service. Otterbox just recently came out with a skin for controllers that actually goes over your controller. It's kind of got a bit of a grip texture to it, and it also protects your controller from drops or the odd toss off if you get mad or whatever. But it comes with a clip and a phone case that helps dissipate the heat, and a privacy screen for your phone. Like, they're starting to think about stuff that, like, we were not thinking about when we were playing, touch controls on our phone. And that's one more thing I want to touch on real quick, is touch controls for certain games. It's definitely something there's a learning curve there. When we're used to playing with controllers and you have that analog feel, it is a little more difficult when you get into something that is just touch control based. But a ton of companies are out there making games that work so well with touch controls that's really what allows them, I think, to have such a broad range here for the amount of people that play mobile games. Like Nate said, they're not necessarily the most hardcore gamers, but there might be more of them now than any other type of gamer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, Scott, I don't know about you, like, this, again, numbers, they're only going up from here with mobile gaming. I think there's so many cool things. What do you think?
Oh, well, I think you guys both nailed it exactly, because it is clearly something growing and on the rise. And I think that's for two reasons, basically, which you just went over. One is accessibility. All these services are offering these big ideas and packages and services that can, actually deliver a full AAA game into a mobile device. And then you also have the developers in the video game industry coming down to that scale and producing their own kind of mobile version of a game, or having dual systems working at the same time, like Fortnite did, and I believe Apex can, and PUBG as well. And it's something that's definitely being included and actively thought about now, which is, I think, what makes it new to us to see this just flash of growth.
Well, even just to kind of add on, actually, I heard this recently. Call of Duty Mobile hit the Chinese market recently, and on day one, or within 24 hours, over 16 million users.
Yeah.
What? Think about, even if every person spent 50 cents, man, you're making bank. Yeah. Like, there's so much money, and there's, that's just one point I had to kind of throw in there, because that's just crazy, man.
But it's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point though, Nate, because video games for the console release aren't necessarily cheap to get into, right? If you're looking for a brand new game, sometimes you're dropping $80 to $120, $130, depending on what level tier you want to buy that game at. Where if you pick up your phone, there's so many games on there for free, which then you can buy currency when you're in the game. But it's just at a cheaper level that is just, again, way more accessible when it comes to the mobile market, right? And it's everywhere. The biggest thing moving forward for the mobile industry is curation. Get the crap out of the way where we don't want to see any of that stuff, and let us play the good stuff, right? So you have sites that are out there that are pushing for the good things, but it's also on the market. When you jump in the market, even though the game's new, it might just be awful, and I don't want to play it. Exactly. And that's one of the other concerns moving forward in the mobile market, is how do you get rid of all the junk that's in there and make the good ones stand out? The future of mobile market is around. It's not going anywhere. The games are only getting bigger. We're playing RPGs on our phone in a mobile fashion. It's quite the industry, man. It is mind-blowing to think of. Video games, gotta love them. Let us know what game you're playing on your mobile device at insidethegame.ca.
Alright, so I'm back with another segment of Level Up. Now last week, we got a little bit of information on Melusi and some of her placement for her gadget on Villa. Now this week, I'm talking about cameras. Yep, cameras just where they are on the maps. And more specifically, I'm going to be taking care of Border. Alright, so on Border, there are 7 cameras. 3 that are outside, 2 that are on the main floor, and 2 that are on the second floor. So to start things off, I typically spawn in Valley on Border. Now I do this because you can easily take out 2 cameras that are outside. Spawn peeking is pretty cheeky in this game, so I find when you spawn on the west vehicle entrance, you're really quite exposed. And the east side, now it's not too bad, so if the bombs are on that side of the map, you can spawn here. But again, it's just, you do run a little more risk. So that covers all the exterior cams. Now let's head on inside. Now firstly, this is a cam that I like to take out because you can do it fairly safely, and it's actually kind of cheeky again with this little peek that I found. Now the exit hallway cam is the one I'm talking about, and as you can see here, you can easily take it out just by peeking around the corner, making yourself safe from the right side door right in front of you, and from really just exposing yourself from that full double door. So after you blast through that cam, you move on just around the corner to the main lobby cam. Now this one, there's really no getting around it. You're pretty exposed if you're shooting this thing. You are at a central point in this map. You absolutely need to be aware of your surroundings, so if you're going to take this thing out, make sure that you can, or that you do, very quickly. So there you go, we have 5 cameras already taken care of. We have 2 more on the second floor. So if we just go around the corner from the main lobby through the waiting room, we are at East Stairs Cam. The East Stairs Cam you can access from quite a few spots. There's one that if you practice with time and time, you will actually be able to get it. But I mean, that's if you really care to spend that much time just to learn exactly where to aim at a door at an exact spot. But at any rate, this camera is important. It covers quite a bit of area, so you better take this camera out. So after blasting through the second last cam, let's cover the one just straight through the hall right next to it. The main hallway, the 90 we call it while we're playing this. This is another very important cam. It covers your access to the armory and just the other side of the map and second floor. This camera is essential to have around, so if you're an attacker, make sure you take this one out. Alright, so that's it. all 7 cameras on board are taken care of. Now I hope this helps you because cameras are essential to deal with as an attacker. Knowing where they are and how to, take them down without exposing yourself is essential. So I hope this really helps you level up. Now again, if you guys have any tips of your own, please hit us up on our website or on our Discord. We would love to hear from you.
We're off to hunt. It's time to rise. Scott, you and I are jumping into something we don't normally check out very often. We're actually checking out a demo over on the Nintendo Switch, and we're doing this because, well, the Nintendo Switch is definitely getting a little long in the tooth with when its initial release versus now, and the fact that we're into next-gen consoles completely. We wanted to go back and take a look at, well, Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter is a big, massive game, obviously on last-gen consoles with Monster Hunter World and the Iceborne DLC. The game is absolutely massive, and you and I wanted to check out the demo over on the Nintendo Switch to see how well it ran. For me, I had a good time, dude. How are you making out with Monster Hunter Rise?
Yeah, I have to echo that as well. I had a good time with this demo, and I'm excited for the full release of this. It's worth noting that this game was developed alongside Monster Hunter World, so a lot of the same mechanics and systems and even set pieces are being reused, but it's a fresh enough game that I don't think that holds it back at all. If anything, that's a seal of quality. And this game sets out to do a little bit different than the Monster Hunter World ideas, brought you to. This one is a lot more vertical in the map environment. It still carries a seamless map environment, meaning it's a smaller open area, but you can explore the entire thing without loading screens. And it's got that same kind of Monster Hunter cycle that I'm used to through Worlds, and a lot of players are really enjoying, and that's you go out on these hunts, you prepare yourself by bringing as many resources as you can to craft traps and stuff like that, and then you find these monsters, slay them or capture them, bring them back to town, and kind of rinse repeat. You end up getting these parts from the monsters, you can create weapons and armor through that, and that's how you're meant to progress. There's nothing really new about that in this title, but it's a new iteration of it, and they're attempting to bring more verticality, I guess, more exploration to the map, and I think that's really cool. This one, the demo is somewhat limited. You get 30 attempts, so whether you win or lose, that is an attempt, and there's 30 of those you are allowed to use before the demo is expired, and there's only 2 monsters available, at least at the time we got a hold of it. There is a beginner and an intermediate monster to find and hunt, but if you defeat that monster, it's still there. The mission is still there for you to take on again, so it's just meant to be a sample.
No, absolutely. I had a great time playing this. I was more curious on how well it would run on the Nintendo Switch, right? Because coming off of Monster Hunter World, that ran really smooth, but it also had more powerful tech behind it to make sure that the fidelity was there. How well would that translate over to the Switch? I'm pretty happy to say that it was relatively well received. Playing on the Joy-Cons, though, not so good. Man, those Joy-Cons are so flighty when you're trying to do the controls and you're trying to aim. There were several characters to choose from. It was really up to you to match your play style. So I was testing out a couple different ones there. Going with the heavy brawler with the big sword, or versus that going with like a bow and arrow mechanic. And the bow and arrow mechanic was weak, but yet it was flighty. Like you're all over the place, you're floating around kind of thing. A little harder to nail down. I actually put it on the big screen, grabbed one of the Pro controllers, and it felt much better. But again, I think going on the Switch, it's a nice addition for the Switch. The fact that you have Monster Hunter on the go is a nice, charming surprise for me. And I thought, this is really cool. They're gonna add multiplayer. That's something that's in the works. They already have the party chat system in there where you can go in and you can talk to people, which I thought was really nice to have. The fact that you're able to, just with a flick of a button, you know, have a comment or two, because, you know, we all know Nintendo and the fact that their party system really doesn't have a party chat system, which is still something that is unbelievable. But moving forward, at least Monster Hunter has able to, you know, figure a way around that when you're able to go out, because Monster Hunter is about going out with your friends, teaming up, and then, you know, going out to destroy the monster and then come back and rinse and repeat. And it's got that game loop still. We all know what Monster Hunter is. If you haven't, I think it's definitely something you should check out. I've had a ton of fun playing so far, but like you said, it's got 2 monsters, and then you just keep going back and doing the same one. So 30 attempts, I would say you should be able to pull that off well within the 30 attempts. But I definitely want to see what Monster Hunter Rise has to offer on completion of the release, and I want to see more about the story. Why are we here? What's going on in the world of Monster Hunter?
Yeah, now this is belonging to the series that is less on stories and more on just monster variety. There is a separate Monster Hunter Stories series that gives you a lot more of that narrative. So I know that not to expect too much out of this in that regard, but it's going to come down to what kind of monsters do we see? Is there any sort of online interaction with the developers? Are they updating the game? Is there events featuring new monsters? These are things we've seen in World that have done very well. And to your point, it's interesting in this demo that they give you the bow gun and the bow to attempt, because those are traditionally more of a support role. But I believe there's 8 different weapon types. There could be more than that, but you're allowed to select at least 8 in the demo. And there's a lot of the Monster Hunter type of weapons, like the bug glaive, the switch axe, lances, gun lances. You know, these wacky kind of ideas that we've seen in other Monster Hunter games done before. That was really fun to jump into and get a kind of handle on in this one. It's going to be really cool to see what kind of environments they go with in this one too, because we only get a glimpse of one environment through the demo here.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of the wonder to the world that is Monster Hunter, is the monsters and the environments. And although it doesn't look quite next gen,
No,
being
for sure.
on the Switch, it's kind of, you know, held back in that regard. But I feel like they did a good job of populating the world and making it look at least full and modern enough. I don't when I'm looking at the game, I don't see any sort of graphical problems, and that's very important nowadays.
Well, Scott, you and I had a great time checking out Monster Hunter Rise over on the Nintendo Switch. Let us know if you're checking out the demo and how well you're making out. Until then, we'll wait to see the full release and our full review on March 26th.
A follow-up to Monster Hunter World with all the series' favorite weapons and new monsters to hunt.
Good job, buddy. All right!
Well, that'll wrap up this week's episode. Thank you so much for hanging out. Now, of course, you can end off the show. All you have to do is go to insidethegame.ca or hit us up on Discord like Bear vs. Shark did, as he's ending things off with some Call of Duty Cold War. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week inside the game.
Enemy counter spy plane inbound. Losing C.